place where we really plunge into complex documents, trying to pull out the insights that matter for you. Today, we're tackling something pretty fundamental if you're involved in Ontario real estate. The agreement of purchase and sale.
That big one, Form 100.
Exactly. You find that perfect place, it feels right, but how do you actually make it yours? It all kicks off with making an offer.
And that's what we're diving into today. That document, the offer, it's everything.
Right.
Our mission here is to give you, our listener, a kind of shortcut to understanding the really key parts, what buyers and sellers need to do, what to watch out for.
Without getting buried in legal jargon.
Exactly. Think of it as boosting your confidence for the whole process.
Okay, so let's set the scene a bit. This form, it's owned by the Ontario Real Estate Association, or OREA. It's mainly an educational tool for their members, right?
That's right. And you'll see those trademarks, Realtor, MLS. Those belong to the Canadian Real Estate Association, CREA. They identify the professionals.
Good point. And we should be super clear up front.
Absolutely.
What we're discussing today is for information only. It's based on OREA's annotated forms, which are great for a general idea, but this isn't legal advice.
Definitely not. You absolutely need your own lawyer, accountant, or other pros for your specific deal. This is about giving you the foundation so you know what questions to even ask.
Perfect. So let's pull back that curtain. The agreement of purchase and sale, what's its core function? What power does it hold?
Well, at its heart, it's the buyer saying, I want to buy this property and here are my terms. It's not just the price.
It's way more than that.
Oh, yeah. It details everything the buyer needs. Maybe they need financing or home inspection. Maybe they need to sell their own place first. It lays all that out.
And for the seller?
For the seller, it's the document that says, okay, someone serious wants to buy, let's negotiate. It takes the property off the market, potentially, and moves towards a film deal.
And it's definitely not a one-shot thing. It's a negotiation.
Oh, for sure. The buyer makes the offer. The seller looks at it. Maybe they change something, sign it back.
Back and forth.
Exactly. It can go back and forth a few times until everyone agrees. It's a real process.
Okay, let's dig into the actual document. Right at the top, the creation date. Seems simple, but why is that date so important?
It immediately timestamps everything. It gives you a clear starting point for all the deadlines and negotiations that follow. Can't argue with the date it was created.
And then the names. Full legal names.
Crucial. Gotta have the full legal names of every single buyer and seller. No nicknames, no shortcuts. It has to be legally precise.
Makes sense. And then the property itself. It's more than just 123 Main Street, right?
Way more. You need the address, yeah, but also the frontage, the depth, and the full legal description from the deed.
Including easements.
Yeah, any easements, like if the hydro company has a right of way, that all defines the property. And of course, the price, clearly stated in Canadian dollars. No room for confusion there.
Okay, so who, what, where, how much? Got it. Next up, something that really shows commitment. The deposit. You called it the sincerity pledge.
Hey, yeah, because that's what it is, really. It shows the buyer is serious, acting in good faith.
Not just kicking tires.
Exactly. It gives the seller confidence. It's often the first real sign, maybe even more than the offer price, that this buyer means business.
And when does the buyer actually hand over that deposit?
It can vary. It might be herewith, meaning right with the offer itself.
Okay.
Or it could be upon acceptance. That means the buyer has 24 hours after the deal is officially accepted to get that deposit to whoever is holding it.
And where does it sit? Does it earn interest?
Typically, no. It goes into a brokerage's non-interest-bearing real estate trust account. So no interest for buyer or seller. The rest of the money, the balance, that's usually detailed in Schedule A.
Right. Okay, timing seems critical everywhere in this document. Let's talk about two big ones. Irrevocability and the completion date. What's irrevocability?
Okay, so when you submit an offer, you set an irrevocable time. Like, this offer is good until 6 p.m. tomorrow. During that window, you, the person who made the offer, cannot legally withdraw it. The other party needs that time to consider it without worrying you'll suddenly pull it back.
It locks you in for that period.
It does. And see that spot for a seal next to the signature. That's not just decoration. Legally, it signifies that something of value was given to make that promise binding. It reinforces the irrevocability.
Interesting. And the completion date. That's the big day, right? Closing day.
That's the finish line. It's the date everything is scheduled to finalize. The agreement is very clear. It cannot be a weekend or a statutory holiday.
Makes sense. Banks and lawyers need to be working.
Exactly. And unless you've agreed otherwise, that's the day the buyer gets vacant possession, the keys.
Communication is key too. How do formal notices work under this agreement? Sending documents back and forth.
There are specific ways. Notices can be delivered in person or hand-delivered to the official address for service listed in the agreement.
Or electronically.
Yes, or electronically, by fax or email, if those details are provided. And if brokerages are involved, they usually act as agents for sending and receiving these notices.
And digital signatures are okay.
Yep. The agreement explicitly states that electronically transmitted signatures are considered original. Big convenience factor there.
Definitely. All right, let's get practical. Stuff. What actually comes with the house. This brings us to chattels, fixtures, and rentals. Start with chattels included.
Okay, chattels are the movable things. Think appliances, window coverings maybe, stuff the buyer wants included in the price.
And you need to be specific.
Oh, absolutely. When in doubt, spell it out is the rule. Don't just say fridge. Say the stainless steel Brand X fridge, Model Y. Serial numbers are even better.
Wow.
Yeah, you'd be surprised how many arguments happen over a dishwasher or a microwave. And importantly, these chattels have to be free of liens, no debts attached to them.
Okay, so the flip side, fixtures excluded. These are things attached to the house that the seller wants to take.
Exactly. A fixture is something physically attached, like a ceiling light or a built-in bookcase. If the seller wants to take that special dining room chandelier, they must list it here as excluded.
Otherwise, it stays.
Generally, yes. If it's attached and not excluded, it's considered part of the property being sold.
Got it. And then rental items. This feels like a bigger deal now than it used to be.
It really is. Hot water tanks are the classic example. Often, they're rented or on a lease-to-own contract.
Not actually owned by the seller.
Right. So this section identifies those items. The agreement usually says the buyer agrees to take over those rental contracts, assuming they can be taken over. You need to know what ongoing costs you're inheriting.
Crucial detail. Okay, let's tackle a topic that can make people nervous. HST. The Harmonized Sales Tax.
Ah, yes, HST. The agreement makes it clear. Is the HST included in the purchase price, or is it in addition to the purchase price?
So it's spelled out.
It has to be. And if the sale isn't subject to HST, maybe for a resale home, the seller needs to certify that. One key thing. Any HST on the chattels we just talked about, if applicable, that's usually not included in the main purchase price.
Good distinction. All right, digging deeper now. Title search and future use. What's involved in a title search?
This is homework for the buyer's lawyer. They examine the property's title history.
Looking for problems.
Exactly. Checking for things like outstanding municipal work orders, any notices saying something's wrong, making sure the current use of the property is legal, and checking that the main building can be insured against fire.
There's a deadline for this.
Yes, the requisition date. The buyer's lawyer has until that date to raise any issues found during the search. The seller also agrees here to let the municipality release details about work orders, which helps the search.
Okay. And future use, what's the catch there?
The catch is the agreement doesn't guarantee your future plans for the property will be legal, unless you specifically write in a warranty about a future use. Say, you want to run a business from the basement and get the seller to guarantee it's allowed. The default is no promises. Checking zoning for future plans is on you, the buyer.
Right. Buyer beware on future plans. Okay. Guarding the investment further. Title, closing arrangements, documents and discharge, and inspection. What does good title actually mean here?
Good title means it's free from most restrictions, charges, liens. Clear ownership, basically.
But there are exceptions.
Yeah, some common, usually minor things are acceptable, like small easements for utilities, municipal agreements that have been followed, maybe some old restrictive covenants about, say, fence height as long as they're being complied with.
And if the lawyer finds a real problem with the title?
If it's a valid objection and the seller can't or chooses not to fix it, the buyer can usually back out and get their deposit back. It's a critical protection.
How do closings actually happen now? It's mostly electronic.
Almost entirely in Ontario, yes. Forget meeting in person to swap keys and checks. It's done electronically between the lawyer's offices.
How does that work?
The agreement talks about requisite deliveries, the closing funds, documents that don't get registered electronically. These are exchanged in trust between the lawyers following protocols set by the Law Society. Often involves secure wire transfers, maybe using the Bank of Canada's Links system for large amounts. It's very secure and efficient.
What about documents the seller might have, like an old survey or existing mortgages?
The seller provides any available documents like surveys or deeds they possess. For mortgages with big banks, the seller's lawyer usually gives an undertaking a promise to pay it off and discharge it after closing.
After.
Yeah, but for mortgages from private lenders or smaller institutions, those typically must be discharged by the closing date, cleared off the title before ownership transfers.
Got it. And the inspection clause.
Yeah.
What does it clarify?
It basically says the buyer acknowledges they had the chance to inspect the property. It also points out that if the buyer wants a formal home inspection report condition, they need to add it.
So if there's no inspection condition,
then you're accepting the property's condition as it is, basically. You didn't make the deal conditional on getting a satisfactory report.
important distinction. Okay. Protecting against the unexpected. Insurance and the Planning Act. Who's responsible for insurance before closing?
The seller is. They keep the property insured right up until the completion date. If something happens, like a fire, the insurance money is held in trust.
And if there's major damage?
If there's substantial damage before closing, the buyer gets a choice. Either walk away from the deal and get their deposit back, or go ahead with the purchase and receive the insurance payout.
But the buyer needs their own insurance policy ready for closing day.
Absolutely. The seller's policy doesn't transfer. You need your own coverage starting the moment you take ownership.
And the Planning Act clause. Why is that in there?
That ensures the deal depends on the seller complying with rules about subdividing land. It prevents situations where the property being sold was maybe split improperly, which could cause huge legal issues later. It has to be a legally compliant parcel of land.
Makes sense. All right, financial and legal essentials. Document prep, residency, adjustments. Who pays to prepare which documents?
The seller pays to prepare the main transfer document, the deed. Except for the land transfer tax affidavit part, the buyer usually covers that.
Okay.
And if the buyer is getting a mortgage from the seller, which is rare but possible, the buyer pays to prepare those mortgage documents.
Residency. This relates to taxes, right?
Yeah.
Especially for sellers.
Yes, it's a big one for the Canada Revenue Agency. It deals with the Income Tax Act rules for non-residents selling property.
So the seller confirms they are a resident.
Right. The seller warrants they are not and won't be a non-resident of Canada for tax purposes. If they are a non-resident, there are tax implications.
What happens then?
The buyer might have to hold back a portion of the purchase price to cover potential taxes owed by the non-resident seller, unless the seller provides a special certificate from the CRA confirming the tax situation is handled. It protects the buyer from getting stuck with the seller's tax bill.
Crucial protection. And finally, adjustments. Those prorated costs. What gets adjusted?
These are things like property taxes, condo fees, maybe fuel oil in a tank, rent if it's an income property, costs that run over time.
How they split?
They're prorated, usually as of the completion date. The seller pays up to the day before closing, and the buyer pays from the day of closing onwards. It ensures a fair split based on who owns the property when.
Okay, good to know. Moving beyond the deal now. Some final clauses. Property assessment.
Yeah, this acknowledges that property values and taxes change. Ontario uses current value assessment and properties get reassessed.
And the clause protects.
It protects everyone involved, buyer, seller, and the real estate agents from being sued later if the property taxes go up or down due to reassessment after the closing. Can't blame the agent if the assessment changes next year.
Fair enough. Time limits. This sounds strict.
It is. Time shall, in all respects, be of the essence. That phrase means deadlines are absolute. Miss a deadline, even by minutes, and you could potentially void the entire agreement.
Wow. So no wiggle room.
Not unless both parties formally agree in writing to an extension. Verbal agreements don't cut it here. Deadlines are firm.
Okay. And tender, what does that mean here?
Tender is about proving you're ready to close on the completion date.
How do you prove it?
For the buyer, it usually means showing they have the money ready, a certified check, bank draft, or confirmation of a wire transfer. For the seller, it means having the signed deed and the keys ready to hand over. It's a formal way of saying, I'm here, ready, willing, and able to complete my side of the deal.
Like putting your cards on the table on closing day.
Exactly. It's a legal formality to show preparedness.
Okay, nearly there. Crucial protections and acknowledgments. Family Law Act.
This is the seller warranting that they have the right to sell the property without needing their spouse's consent under the Family Law Act. Or, if spousal consent is needed, that the spouse has signed the consent section right in the agreement.
Avoids problems later if a spouse claims they didn't agree.
Precisely. It protects the buyer from that kind of complication.
UFFI, urea formaldehyde foam insulation. Sounds old school.
Yeah.
Still relevant.
Apparently so. It's still in the standard form. The seller warrants they didn't install it, and as far as they know, it's never been in the property.
And that warranty lasts.
Yes, significantly, this UFFI warranty survives closing, meaning the seller is still on the hook for it even after the deal is done. It's a leftover from past health concerns, but carries ongoing legal weight.
Interesting. And the big one, legal, accounting, and environmental advice.
Absolutely critical. This clause hammers home that the real estate brokerage and agents are not giving legal, tax, or environmental advice.
Just real estate advice.
Right. It explicitly tells buyers and sellers to get their own independent professional advice on those matters. Don't rely on your agent for complex legal interpretations or tax strategies. That's what lawyers and accountants are for.
Very important distinction. Okay, modern considerations. Consumer reports.
Just a heads up for the buyer that a credit check or personal information report might be looked at as part of the process, maybe by a lender.
Makes sense. Agreement in writing. What's the key takeaway here?
Two things. First, if you add a special clause, say in Schedule A, and it conflicts with one of the standard pre-printed clauses, your added clause takes precedence.
Okay, custom beat standard.
Right. Second, this agreement, including all schedules, is the entire agreement. No verbal promises, no side deals, no other representations count unless they are written into this document.
What you see is what you get, legally.
Pretty much. It prevents he said, she said disputes later, and related to that, electronic signatures.
We touched on that. It just confirms they're okay.
Yes, it formally states both parties agree to use electronic signatures following the rules of the Electronic Commerce Act. Essential for making digital transactions legally sound.
Okay, final few details. Time and date, references.
All based on the local time where the property is located. Simple, but avoids confusion if parties are in different time zones.
Good point. And successors and assigns. What's that for?
That means the agreement is binding not just on the people who sign it, but also on their heirs, executors, administrators if someone passes away, or assigns if rights are transferred. It ensures the agreement continues.
So the deal doesn't just die if something happens to one of the parties.
Exactly. It provides continuity.
And then finally, the signing section itself.
Yep. Spaces for all buyers and sellers to sign, witness signatures, the spousal consent section if needed, and then the crucial confirmation of acceptance.
That locks it all in.
That's the final step. It records the exact date and time the last required signature was obtained, making the agreement legally binding on everyone. There are also spots for brokerage info and lawyer details for practical follow-through.
And we mentioned Schedule A a few times.
Right. Schedule A is attached and is super important. It details how the balance of the purchase price will be paid.
So payment details, maybe conditions.
Exactly. Financing conditions, inspection conditions, sale of buyer's property conditions, any specific terms often live in Schedule A. It customizes the standard form.
Wow, okay. That is a lot. Going through it clause by clause really highlights how detailed and frankly how complex this document is.
It really is. It covers so many bases.
This deep dive, I hope for you listening, has really helped demystify this agreement of purchase and sale. We've hit the key clauses, the ones that really impact you whether you're buying, selling, or just, want to understand this major legal document better.
And that really is the so what, isn't it? Understanding this isn't just about the law.
Yeah.
It's about giving you the power to navigate one of life's biggest deals with real confidence.
Knowing what to ask, what details matter.
Spotting potential issues. It puts you more in control.
So here's something to chew on. Given how incredibly detailed this agreement tries to be, covering almost every angle we can think of now, what's next? What might be the next frontier for standard real estate agreements? Could new tech like blockchain change things? Or, societal shifts we haven't fully grasped yet? What might be missing from these forms that maybe in 10 or 20 years we'll realize we desperately needed?
That's a fascinating question. What don't we know we need yet? Food for thought.